And all join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. And put the palms down. All right. Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thank you for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? As you're here for the first time, what brings you here? Did they tell you where you were going? Your friends?
Yeah.
So you knew where you were going?
Yeah.
You get tired of them talking about it forever and finally decided to show up?
Not tired of them talking about it. I guess feeling like it's about time.
Yeah.
Time to check it out.
Nice. Have they all changed drastically since they've been coming here?
Oh, complete 180.
Well, glad you're here. Yeah. What else? First time here? What brings you here?
So I'm here because I kind of read a little bit about Buddhist teaching.
Yeah.
I was very interested in learning more, essentially.
Yeah. Anything specific that kind of grabbed your attention that made you think I want to learn more?
I think the concept of just being in the here and the now and just accepting everything as it is, as it comes at you. And I think I would like to practice that.
Yeah. You don't really need to learn anything else. I mean, yeah, that's it. Accepting everything as it comes at you, as it is. That's all. I mean, everything that you'll hear and learn around Buddhist teachings, that sums it up right there. And how good are you at doing that?
I struggle a lot with it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here. Yeah. Anybody else? First time? What brings you here? And nobody wants to put their hands up anymore. What else? Who wants to share why they're here? First time? Somewhere? There was a hand over here. I got an hour. I can do this all night. One more. Yeah, there you go. Thanks.
Third or fourth time.
Oh, yeah.
Just love the calm chaotic life, you know.
Yeah.
Really calm.
And how, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Well, and enjoying it, you know, more.
Yeah. How has it been, you know, the hectic, chaotic life that's out there, that's in your head?
It's still there.
Yeah. And the calmness that's in here, but it's all in your head. How are you seeing differences? How are you seeing in just the 3 or 4 visits you've been here, any impact in your life out there?
Probably not a strong reaction, or just tranquilo, you know.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You say,
Yeah. Less of a strong reaction to things that are happening. Yeah. But not ignoring things that are happening. Just, yeah. Yeah, that's good. Anybody else want to share why they're here before we start with the meditation practice? For those of you who keep coming back, why show up? Yeah.
I feel like it's much easier to meditate here than at home.
Yeah.
I struggle like to stay 10 minutes at home. And here I managed to stay 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So
Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's harder to do this at home, to sit at home?
I think there are more distractions over there. Here, I guess we have a purpose of staying here and doing that. So at home,
Sure.
it's a little harder.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. What else? Yeah.
I like coming back to the beginner, or this is kind of considered like a beginner class, right?
Yeah.
Because the same question can get asked, yet I can get something different out of it every time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because often people, like every so often someone will come, not too often, but once in a while, someone will come up to you and, they'll have come to, we call this Intro to Buddhism and Meditation. And I've been calling it Intro to Buddhism and Meditation for 15 plus years. And if I'm alive another 15 years, I'll still be calling it Intro to Buddhism and Meditation. And often people will come maybe like, or I should say, every once in a while, someone will come like twice, like, all right, I've done the intro one. What's next? It's like, it's just on repeat over and over and over again. If we can go one day with doing nothing but thinking good thoughts and speaking good words and doing good deeds, then we're ready for something beyond this. But I don't know what that's like. So if there is a more advanced class, it would be taught by somebody else, not me. I'm going to stick to this because this is hard enough. But you're right. I do same thing. I see the same questions year in and year out. And yet every single time we respond to them differently. We learn something different from them. We see how the practice changes our lives outside of here. So yeah, same thing. One more. Someone else was going to share, and then we'll move on. Yeah.
I think putting in the work recently has really shown a noticeable difference, and that's why I keep showing up.
Yeah. When you say putting in the work, what does that mean to for those who maybe haven't kind of heard that expression or?
Practicing acceptance, meditating more often, trying to be more present, catching my thoughts when they start getting out of control, and just kind of recognizing that they're just thoughts and trying to come back to the moment a little bit more often instead of just letting them, go on repeat, unnoticed.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's ultimately to put it into context, what the meditation practice is, especially for those who might be brand new, is often we think that meditation is this thing that's going to take us out of all of our problems. But ultimately, when we practice seated or walking, whatever form of meditation you do, it is really just helping us condition our minds. So when in our day-to-day lives, we start to see our mind spiraling into all kinds of directions that are unhealthy and, just kind of dangerous for us to go down that track, it gives us the tools to just come back to present moment, to stop that mind from wandering, going into all the madness, and to come back to present moment, to stop the mind from wandering, going into all the madness and come back to the present moment. So it really is just not about meditating to be quiet and good or better. It's just recognize the crazy mind. And if you sit here for 20 minutes and you watch the mind race and race and race, that's what your mind does. But during those 20 minutes, just like the kind of comment about, at home, you can get up, there's the TV or, the refrigerator or the dog or whatever. There's all these other things here. I mean, you're just going to get up and start cleaning stuff, I mean, you're welcome to if you'd like, but the chances are you're kind of locked in. So you're just going to stay. But outside there, we have so many other things we can put our attention on. And so all we're practicing is when our mind goes crazy throughout the day to come back to present moment and just watch it and realize that those thoughts will pass, All right, so we'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. To those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Thank you for showing up. Feel free to say hello. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen. For those who are brand new, again, maybe sitting for the first time, nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Meaning, don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. In this practice, learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are in a cushion, often it helps. Slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Trying to bench or chair, however you're seated. Also just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or lap, whatever's comfortable. If you need to move, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator, just means you need to move. Most important, you're not going to shut the mind off. It will not stop racing. You will not think nothing. Your mind will race. I'll say things periodically to remind you that you're lost in thought. and bring you back to present moment. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, we'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. We'll start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, feel them fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from your practice. Just sitting, breathing. learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, and no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move, and most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. And ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment is often filled with conflict, chaos, difficulty, challenges. This is life. This is not running from things. It's learning to be with it as it arises and be mindful of our thoughts and our words and actions as life occurs. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody you encounter all day long. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything outside of us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it is a practice. It's not a quick fix. It's not a 6-week course. It's something we work on every day. We often spend so much time trying to fix, control people and places and things outside of us. And this is not ignoring the world around us. The actions of others around us are really important to pay attention to. The world is a mess. The world's always been a mess, and sadly, the world will be a mess for probably quite a long time. But the question we ask ourselves is, are we a mess? Am I a mess? And that's what I have to look at. And how my thoughts and words and actions impact everything around me, while being aware of what's happening and seeing how we can engage in the world to create change, but coming from a place of loving kindness and compassion, not from a place of hatred and anger. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I always really prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening for questions. And again, to those joining virtually, glad you're here. Welcome. Feel free to say hello. Somewhere on the screen is a chat box. If you have any questions, you can put them there. I'll do my best to respond. So we'll open up to questions.
When we go into meditation, why do you hit the ball 3 times?
Why do I hit the ball 3 times? So each Buddhist lineage, tradition, practice, culture will all do things differently, right? And so for me, being trained in a very traditional Taiwanese Buddhist temple kind of monastery life, I was taught certain rituals. And if you go to, it's why you've heard me, I always encourage people go to what I call cultural Buddhist temples, right? I mean, you come to a place like the Dharma Bum Temple and 99% of you probably were not raised Buddhist. You didn't grow up going to different Buddhist temples. You went to other religious stuff and saw lots of rituals and things like that. And then the average Western person comes into Buddhism and they're like, yeah, I'm not into that religious stuff, all that ritual, blah, blah, blah. So they come to the Dharma Bum Temple and they're like, all right, this is cool. I can meditate, ask questions about all the problems in my life and get some answers. Well, if you go to Taiwanese temples, Vietnamese temples, Korean temples, Japanese temples, Thai, Lao, Cambodian temples, you're going to feel like you walked in a Catholic church. They have just as much ritual as every other religion. You just don't see it so much here, right? So for me personally, I have very few things that when I lead, I bring into the practice, like at the beginning when I do my offerings, and same thing with the bell. And so for me, what I was taught the bell was, as you hit it 3 times, you're bringing to mind what's called the triple gem, which at the beginning we take refuge in, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And so the 3 strikes of the bell in this situation, that's what it is for me. It's just calling to mind the refuge of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Yeah. But each, like I said, tradition, you may go somewhere else and they'll hit it 12 times. I don't know, maybe they're taking refuge in the triple gem 4 times. So they're all different. Yeah. What else?
You mentioned dependent origination. Can you just explain that a little bit more?
Sure. Let me just sum up the basis of the Buddhist awakening so we can all have it figured out by 8 o'clock. So dependent origination, pratitya samuppada, as I always say at the end of the meditation, the basis of the Buddhist awakening. Everything is contingent upon something else for its existence. Did you get angry at anything today or anyone today? Right? I mean, it's like 7:30 by now, so the odds are pretty good. Right? So you got angry at something or someone today. And when you were angry at that, I don't want the details, but at that thing or that place or that person or whatever it was, in all likelihood, it probably had something to do with you not getting something you wanted. Whether it was a view or a physical thing or whatever it was, you didn't get what you wanted, so you got angry, right? So dependent origination in that situation helps you understand that whatever it was that you didn't get, you have an idea and a reason and a thought about why you think you didn't get it or it didn't occur, or it didn't happen, right? Based on whose perception? Yours. Now, in every interaction, there is someone or something or somewhere else involved. And how much do we actually know about that other person, place, or thing? Not much at all. But in the moment, we don't get what we want, so we're upset. Dependent origination helps us understand that we have no idea, ultimately, what's going on in the other person or place or thing's mind or physical space, whatever it is, right? But when somebody responds to us in a way, say, that's harsh, and our feelings get hurt and we get angry. And I'm not saying that these things are proper or okay. I'm not validating, treating people poorly. I'm just talking about what our reaction is to it. Have you ever responded to someone harshly or poorly? Of course. And when you do that, it's because you're feeling what? Hurt or pain or whatever it is. So when somebody responds to us that way, we immediately kind of often default into how it makes us feel. But dependent origination helps us understand that that person, as an example, has a whole life of suffering that we know nothing about, has a whole life's experiences that we know nothing about, has had a day that we know nothing about. We don't know what just happened to them 5 minutes ago, an hour ago, 20 years ago. All we see is what we are getting or not getting in that moment. And so we react to that moment. Again, dependent origination helps us understand there's endless causes and conditions to every person and place and thing that we don't understand. You might have heard me use this example, but do you know who Emanuel Swedenborg is? No. Yeah, you've heard me. I mean, you've heard it enough, right? So he, 18th century, founded the Church of New Jerusalem. In the 20s, they came together. They built this church, right? It was a Swedenborgian congregation. So this guy, 250 years ago or whatever, without him and his life, you'd be sitting on the floor right now because they built that pew. This church in 1927, they put those pews in there. And here we are 98 years later, and you're sitting on that pew because Emanuel Swedenborg was born. Now, how many of us come in and sit on these pews and thank Emanuel Swedenborg? No, we just think, oh, here's a place to sit. So we tend to look at even physical objects as how we do what with them? How we relate to them, how we use them, and how they serve us, without necessarily understanding the endless causes and conditions, the endless continuation of endless time of things behind us. So dependent origination helps us see at least attempt to see, right? I mean, I'm not saying this is if I can do it, but it helps us attempt to see the endless time and space and interactions behind everything and everyone. And so next time somebody makes you angry, especially with like just little dumb stuff, I mean, yeah, there's heavy abuse, trauma, heavy stuff that goes on, but many people get irritated all day long by stuff that doesn't matter. Your sandwich isn't made the right way. Your latte didn't have enough pumps of whatever in it. You don't like the way your hair looks or the way the shirt fits on you, whatever, the little stuff that ultimately is relatively meaningless, because the next day there's going to be a whole new list of things that are going to annoy you that were equally as important as the things that annoyed you today. And this helps us see through all of those, because we're going to die. And do we want to spend the rest of our life wrapped up in meaningless things? And again, I'm not trying to discount so many things in our lives that really are important and really are heavy and serious things. And if those are the only things that bother you, then okay, I get it. But I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, it's little meaningless things throughout our day that really can trigger us. And often they trigger us because we have other heavy stuff that's happened to us. And so maybe we are triggered easier. We're reminded easier. We go into a painful place easier. But to try not to let the little things bother us. Does that help a little bit? Yeah. It's a heavy one. I mean, and we can do it for everything. What else? Yeah.
Last week, you talked about detachment of self.
Can
you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the question was, for those who didn't hear it, last week I talked about detachment of self. Can I talk a little bit about that? Just to clarify. So it's never detachment, because detachment sounds like a cutting off, a severing. It's not attached, because that sounds like you don't care. It's non-attachment, right? So you might have heard it and then kind of spun it out into your head as detached. It's non-attachment. And it's really important to understand that non-attachment isn't a cutting off of, it's not not loving, it's not caring. Non-attachment is actually love. It is absolute love. But love without, you ever been in a relationship? You ever loved the person? You ever also really had huge expectations of them? For everybody, that the head's all going yes, up and down, right? Huge expectations, huge. You ever tried to maybe potentially, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but manipulate them or control them or fix them or change them? Big smile, right? So that's not love. That's control. That's manipulation. That's wanting people to be a certain way to serve, again, what? Our desire, our need. The Buddha taught that we suffer because of our cravings and desires. There are healthy cravings, right? The desire to suffer less is healthy. The craving to be a healthy individual, to be less stressed, less anger, things like that, those are healthy cravings. The craving to want somebody to be different from who they are, not so healthy. To practice non-attachment is to love them for who and how they are. Now, that doesn't mean we need to stay in that situation if it's unhealthy for us. But dropping expectations, control, manipulation, and efforts to change people to satisfy our needs and our desires is not love. Non-attachment is loving them for who they are and where they are in their lives, and choosing whether we want to stay around or not. Does that make sense? Yeah. Again, I think it comes back to all of these things, similar to the question of dependent origination, pratitya samuppada, is when things happen in our lives, how do we relate to them? How do we utilize them? How do they impact us? Right? And very often we go through our day thinking, who's the most important person? Ourselves. So all of these things, it's like, how do they serve me? How does the seat serve me? How does the person impact me? Very rarely do we really put the other person first, or the other place, or the other thing first. Very often it comes from, getting to your real question, non-attachment to self, right? That was your question. So then looking at what non-attachment is with that lens, then we think, okay, what's your name? Sorry. Justin. I always forget your name. You probably told me that like three times? Twice? Yeah, sorry. Then we think about when Justin spends his days thinking about just Justin. Who are you attached to and who do you think is most important? You. And it doesn't mean you're not important. It doesn't mean you don't exist. It doesn't mean you're not there. But to me, the practice of not attaching to the self is to understand that we're changing always. And very often, what we're trying to do is feed or fill or fix things about us now from things that occurred 30 years ago. So, you have a story about yourself, Justin, that you tell yourself? And when somebody says, tell me about Justin, and you rattle it off because you told it like 1,000 times, is that story who you are? Is it who you are? Or are they just things that have happened? Right? If 10 people say, describe you, are they all going to say the same thing? No. So who's right? Is your perception of you correct? You think so? Then you're going to have a really hard time with this practice. Right? I mean, how can your perception of you be correct? You ever eaten pizza? Okay. When you take a bite of pizza, you have an experience, yeah? Now, if I say, hey, Justin, what's a pizza taste like? And you start to tell me what it tastes like. Is your description of it what it actually tastes like, or is it just your experience of it? So your perception of yourself is the same thing. It's your experience. It's your perception. But that doesn't make it correct. It makes it your story about you, just like 10 other people have their story about you. These are all just perceptions. The challenge is we think that, which I'm actually glad you answered that honestly, and you were like, yeah, I think my perception is correct. That is the reason you're going to struggle a lot. Because what if your perception of yourself is negative? Do you think wonderful, happy things about yourself all day long? No. So if your perception is correct, that would suck. Because that would mean you're just like this shitty person that you keep telling yourself you are all day long. That's not true. That's just your story. I bet there's 10 people out there that would talk about how wonderful you are. Right? I mean, that's also just their story, but it's still a better story. Right? So if you're going to tell a story about yourself, at least tell a better story. But the fact that you are actually stuck in thinking that your perception of yourself is correct, this practice is critical because it'll help you understand that you're just taking all the experiences in your life and all the things you've done and you've created a story about who you are. And you think that story is real. In that story, do you include any good things you've done in your life? Good. Also just a story, but your story will change. Always changing. Don't attach to it. It's just an illusion. Yeah. Experience. That's the practice. Moment to moment experiences. Not like a continuation of a story that we're always telling ourselves about ourselves. What else? Yeah.
I don't know if it directly applies to Buddhism, but it's a term I've heard used a lot, and I really struggle understanding is the concept of unconditional love.
Yeah. So the question was whether it refers to Buddhism or not, but you've heard me use a lot the example or the phrase of unconditional love. So your question is, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I just have a hard time believing that you could love somebody unconditionally. Like, I love my son.
Yeah.
And I love my daughter. But, like, what if my son murdered my daughter? Or something,
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Would that mean, so you're saying you would no longer love your son?
I don't know, but I just threw that out as an example, but I do
Yeah.
find concepts like that really mind-bending.
Absolutely. I hear you. So, yeah, great question. I mean, it's since you threw that extreme of an example, I'm going to tell you a brief relatively brief story. I don't know if anyone in here is familiar with Azim Kamiza, the Tariq Kamiza Foundation. Anybody? So when you get home, Google TKF or just look up TKF, Tariq Kamiza, TKF.org. About 20-something years ago, I volunteered for about 2 to 3 years with the Tariq Kamiza Foundation. Very long story short, Azim Kamiza son was 20 years old. And this was in the early 90s, I believe. Ballpark, right? When it was, doesn't matter. But kid was 20 years old and student at San Diego State. He was delivering pizzas as a job to pay for school. And Tony Hicks was a 14-year-old kid, again, here in San Diego. And Tony wanted to join a gang. So as part of the gang initiation, they asked Tony to shoot and kill somebody. So they ordered a pizza. Tariq shows up, rolls the window down, and Tony pulls a gun out, shoots him, kills him. It was big news in California because Tony was the first juvenile tried as an adult in the state of California, 14-year-old kid, right? So Azim, the father, again, it's a long story, but gets called middle of the night, wakes up, told what happened. And immediately, so I worked with Azim for about 2.5 years closely. And immediately what Azim did was he reached out to Plez, who was Tony's grandfather, but the one who raised him, in an act of forgiveness. And he said, I forgive your grandson for murdering my son. He said, I see victims at two ends of the gun, both ends of the gun. That was their story. He said, I see my son was murdered. My daughter, my wife, myself, my family, we have this loss. You also have a loss. You have a 14-year-old kid who felt like the only way he could feel he was worth something was by joining a gang and shooting and murdering somebody, right? So they joined together and they would go into schools and teach forgiveness and nonviolence. And they would sit, they do it differently now, but they would sit on stage and they would show Plez, the grandfather, and Azim, and the moderator would say, this man's grandson murdered this man's son. And they would show where the bullet passed through Tariq. And they would say, we're here to show you forgiveness is possible. Shortly after, once he was allowed to see him, Azim went to see Tony in prison, 14 years old. And he spent the next 25, give or take, years writing and fighting to get Tony out of prison. A couple years ago, Tony was released. And he said, I always want to work with Tony. Tony was released, joined the Tariq Kamiza Foundation, and now together they go into schools and they can say, this man murdered my son. And I'm here to show you forgiveness is possible. It is to this day, every time, like I said, I've heard this story 1,000 times. Every time I tell it, I'm covered in goosebumps. Every time I think about it, it is the most extreme. Azim, very religious Muslim man. And it was the most intense experience of witnessing what unconditional love actually is. And he's able to love Tony. Truly. I've seen it. And he murdered his son. Do you know why he did it? Why he forgave him? Is he
sharing that around with?
Yep. Carrying that around. He said he had two choices: to live the rest of his life in hatred and anger, to where he probably wouldn't have been able to stay alive, or choose love and forgiveness. So, to me, when I think about unconditional love, it is loving people regardless of what they have done, which, by the way, for those who've never, maybe not heard me speak or anything like that, I'm not saying that these things are good, that they're right, that forgiveness excuses their actions. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm sharing in this story is illustrating that there's a level that might be beyond anything that we can comprehend, right? Maybe we're sitting here saying, oh, I could never do that, and that's fine. But for to say it's not possible, just because, and I look at a lot of Buddhist teachings like this, just because I can't do something or I'm not able to practice something or integrate it into my life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, doesn't mean it's not possible. Just means that, just not there. And that's okay. Where are you? Where are you at on your spiritual journey? That's the important piece, is to look at and be honest with yourself, where you're at. And I think on any spiritual journey, there's work to be done, so yeah.
Well, how does that happen though? How,
How do you get there, right?
Talking about those examples of extreme, thing that I was coming to my mind, about forgiveness that I need to do, right?
Yeah.
Forgive people, and I've been working at it for so long, and it's like, how?
I got it.
I do metta, I send, unconditional love and loving kindness to my enemy, and it's just still the anger's there, the hurt is there. So
what do you do?
What do you do?
Baby steps.
Yeah.
Now, some of these you may have heard me share, a lot of the same silly examples, but it starts with the little things, meaning practicing non-attachment, right, to simple things that don't matter, such as, food, clothes, little things. Have you heard or done my sock challenge or my food challenge? Okay. So I have two for you, and others can play along as well, but since you asked the question. And the reason I before I introduce them is we talk about the levels of forgiveness that we threw out those examples. You talk about, and I can see in the expression, like people that have really harmed you, and sending love and kind, metta and loving kindness, compassion to these people that have done horrific things to people. Yet, do you get angry if your sandwich isn't made the right way? Be honest.
Actually, I'm doing pretty good with that kind of stuff.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
These days.
Yeah, these days.
I don't know if I guess I'll believe you. Yeah. I mean, I believe you. Okay, let me give you an example. So the practice of non-attachment is the practice of non-attachment, regardless of whether it's, forgiveness to people who cause us tremendous harm or silly little things. When you go out to eat, next time you go out to eat, here's my two silly examples. When you go out to eat, say you have a budget, say it's $20, whatever it is, and you go to a place, whether you sit down and order, go to the counter, and with whatever dietary restrictions you have, if you're gluten-free, if you're vegetarian, whatever it is, just say, please bring me anything on the menu under $20 that is gluten-free and, doesn't have, almonds, whatever it is. And just eat what you get. That's it. And see what that's like. The question is why? Well, what it's doing is it's showing you how much we want things to go the way we want them to go. We order food, right? Who here hates mayonnaise? You've heard this too many times. You don't like mayonnaise. You go to a deli. What do you tell them when you order a sandwich? No mayonnaise. You get your sandwich, there's mayo on it. How do you feel? Like you wasted your money. Are you allergic to mayonnaise? No. Is the mayonnaise going to kill you? No. But you got mayonnaise on it. You don't like it. The Buddha said this is called dukkha, suffering, the first noble truth. Life is filled with suffering. Doesn't mean all of life sucks. It just means we're going to struggle a lot. Things happen all day long. Discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. Things happen all day long that we don't like. This is what the Buddha said, the very foundation of his teachings. The second thing is the cause. Greed, anger, ignorance. We always want more. We're angry at how it worked out, and we're ignoring reality. Meaning we're stuck in our head, which says, I want this. As opposed to just being grateful, like, wow, I got a sandwich. Like there's millions of people starving to death right now. Yet we're pissed off because we got mayonnaise on our sandwich, right? I'm not judging you. I get it. I've been there for the majority of my life. So the little things make us angry, right? Sock drawer. Do you wear socks often? Are your socks at home? Are they like all rolled up, or are they just randomly thrown in your drawer? Rolled up, right? You got your name on it or anything? No. All right. So roll it up. And you always put on the socks that match, right? So when you get home, go in your sock drawer, unroll all your socks, mix them all up. When you go out tomorrow to get dressed, grab 2 socks with your eyes closed. They don't match. Put them on and wear them. And not like covered with jeans so nobody sees them, but wear socks that don't match that people see. Why would I suggest that? Why do you think?
How unimportant it really is.
How unimportant it really is.
Yeah.
Yet we spend and buy into a system that tells us what we should wear, what we should eat, where we should live, what we should consume, right? The seasons change, therefore we can't wear certain colors because it's like Labor Day or whatever it is. I mean, I grew up in all this. I get it. I'm not making fun of others. I am other. I am this, right? I get it. But we live in a world where we're stuck thinking that our shirt or our belt must match our shoes. You have your brown belt with your brown shoes, black belt with your black shoes. Like, hello, there are people starving to death and dying in the world that don't have shoes, don't have nothing. And yet we're making sure these things match. Why? What are we so afraid of?
Being judged.
Being judged. These are all addressing the root of the same non-attachment that is required to deal with death, loss, trauma, expectations, heavy things that matter. Your socks, they don't matter, but you think they do. And so what happens is people are like, I've been sending metta, I've been doing all this loving kindness stuff, yet I'm still not able to forgive anyone. But you're still not even comfortable wearing socks that don't match. So spend the next year wearing socks that don't match until you get comfortable with it and realize it doesn't matter. Then you're beginning to cultivate this sense of non-attachment. And then you begin to understand that people do stupid stuff. People harm people. It's what they do. It's not right. It's not good. It's not okay. But it happens. And whoever harmed you that you can't forgive 30 years ago, they were suffering. They were dealing with tremendous pain, tremendous loss, tremendous fear, tremendous sadness, tremendous trauma, tremendous abuse. And then you experienced it. And we can't forgive them. But they too were children who were cute and crying and in diapers. And they were abused and they were traumatized. And then the vicious cycle repeats and it happens to us and we don't know how to forgive people. Yet we also don't know how to wear socks that don't match. Heavy stuff, but yeah. Anything else before we close? Yeah, one hand in the back and we'll close. Yeah.
How do you begin this process, like, to forgive yourself?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so the question was, how do you begin the process to forgive yourself? So difficult, and very often, I'll close with this thought, very often that's the hardest, right? Very often I hear people talk about they can forgive others, but the hardest they have, it's the self. And very often this is tied, I'll try to sum this up because I want to wrap up, but very often this is tied to, do you have an expectation or an idea of how wonderful you're supposed to be? Right? Often we set these benchmarks that we're supposed to be these like flawless, perfect beings, and they were set well before we even knew we were setting them. Other people helped set them for us, and we grew up in that, or maybe we brought it into our own lives. But somewhere along the way, we set these ideas that we're supposed to be perfect, flawless beings. And yet we do things that harm ourselves and harm others. And yet we can't forgive ourselves for it, right? So the question of how do you start the process, understand that Suzuki Roshi was the start of the San Francisco Zen Center, really built San Francisco Zen Center in the kind of 50s, 60s. He would tell his students, you're all perfect exactly how you are, and you all could use a little improvement. So part of forgiving yourself begins, and I know this intimately more than anything. I mean, I grew up just miserable to people, right? And so I had a choice of hating myself and being angry the rest of my life at myself, or recognizing what I did was incredibly harmful to self and others. As my master taught, 3 things for forgiveness. First, recognize what you did was not in line with what we look at in Buddhist teachings: loving kindness, compassion, generosity, morality, patience, all these kind of key compassion, wisdom words. We weren't practicing that. And that's why we did what we did towards somebody else, say, and then we can't forgive ourselves for it. The second one is to apologize. So anything you've done to harm someone, if it's relevant and okay to apologize to them, then great. If it's, somebody's life you ruined 30 years ago and all of a sudden you're getting all Buddhist, you're like, hey, remember me? Like, they're probably over it by now and they've moved on, but find somebody else to genuinely apologize to for what you did. And the third one is to make a vow to not repeat the same behavior that causes harm. So to me, I find, and I have found personally, that forgiveness towards myself wasn't wrapped up even in the word forgiveness, because when I apply forgiveness, it almost made it sound like I wanted to then justify or excuse or dismiss. Owning what we do, owning what I did, wasn't about dismissing it, making it okay. It was never okay. It's still not okay. I cannot take back the harm I caused others. But I also cannot hate myself for it, because that will just lead me to hate myself, which will lead me to do things in that first category that lack compassion and love and kindness, which will lead me to repeat the same behavior, which will lead me to pissing off more people, which will lead me to 2 years later asking the same question again. You're just human. Lower the bar. Be nice to yourself once in a while. Care for yourself once in a while. And forgiveness kind of falls away. That's what I have found. It's not about forgiving myself. It's about understanding what I did sucked. And I don't need to forgive myself. I need to not do it again. And I need to not forget it. And forgiveness kind of falls away. It's this word that I often, towards self and my personal practice, I found really wrapped up in just a lot of like shame and all that stuff. I don't know if that helps at all, but yeah. So I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. All right, before y'all head out, we have a few announcements our Dharma Bum host Hazel will make. Thanks, Hazel.
Hello. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who leave are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night, we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, please feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.
Thanks, Hazel.
Thank you.